Hello, seekers of reed knowledge. I'm John Ferrillo, and um, Angela Quattrini, my able manager, my assistant, is doing the video. She's the videographer, and we're going to do a new presentation on our knives and on our sharpening system. Our old ones are the somewhere in the sixth or seventh level of Troy at this point. We had to make new ones because we have a new website. So here is the centerpiece of the sharpening system. It's a sharpening jig. Linda Stroman and I were sitting in the pit of the Metropolitan Opera in the 90s, and a colleague of ours, um, Jerry Kagan, who was a fine cellist and also a very capable, the son of a jeweler, very gifted craftsperson. He made bows. And to make bows, you need scraping knives. So Jerry saw Linda Stroman and me sharpening our knives on India stones in the pit. He said, "Look, I think I can have a better system for you." And by gum, he came up with a jig that did not look identical to this. It was an adapter. It was an adaptation of a General Tools planer blade sharpening jig, in which the blade was mounted this way. So we had to adapt it for use with our knives. But he built a platform and produced a system that just really kind of revolutionized my knife care. Now, there are many systems out there at this point, some of them quite expensive and maybe capable. I think that these are very useful not only for your average professional, but for somebody teaching young people. I help teach the New England Conservatory Prep Reed class. My daughter was a 15-year-old in that class, and within a couple months, she was producing knives that were as sharp as mine. They're based on the principle that my knife sharpening techniques that I did freehand were, which is that the entirety of the knife blade should be sharpened at the same time. The advantage of these is they hold an angle. And I think that's important. What happens when you do things by hand on, on the old India plates or on any of these plates is that gradually a person rolls the knife inward because you're always trying to catch the very edge. Now, just to review, these are scraping knives, not cutting knives. So honing is a completely different project with these. And what we do is we always end either with a double hollow ground knife or a bevel knife. We end on the side away from you, and we create a burr. And the burr helps that scraping action. So we're not cutting, we're sort of scooping cane off using this very subtle burr. So that's one aspect of this. Now, I have always used bevel edge knives. That's what my teachers used in high school. And we used something made by a man named Waldemar Bozais, who was second oboist in the Met before I served in the Met. And Wally was a very, very good machinist and knew steel. And we did a metallurgical analysis of my old Bozais knives, which I went through many of, and we came up with a high carbon alloy. This is very fine German steel that is hardened to quite a high Rockwell. It's very smooth steel, it's very nicely homogenized. It takes a burr easily and holds that burr. Now, one of the things we know is that metallurgy is as much a craft as it is a science at this point. We have gone to many fantastic new alloys. I've learned a lot about these things. Getting gouging machine blades going instead of blades that are oil quench. People used to use motor oil, heat them up to a particular color, stick them in the oil. We now have air-cooled steels that are very sophisticated. At any rate, I really do believe in this German steel that we use. Now, the next aspect of this is the abrasive stones that we use. As I said before, we used to use Norton India stones. Norton, by the way, is a company that was just about 15 miles away from this house in Harvard, Massachusetts. It was in Worcester. Alas, it is no more. But they made a very nice India oil stone. The closest thing I've found to that kind of texture is the EZE-LAP diamond lapping plate. Now, you can see we have two diamond lapping plates here. One is made by EZE-LAP, the other one is made by DMT. And I need to explain the differences between them. The EZE-LAP is a 1200 grit plate. When you first get it, it is quite grabby, a little bit aggressive. It requires breaking in. It is not a very long break-in period, and it is something that you can do really in a period of several weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, just doing a bit of break-in for 5 or 10 minutes a day. The DMT plate comes quite smooth and giving a very nice edge. Now, as you might imagine, however, this much smoother, finer plate does not endure as long. Now, if that's not a problem for you, I understand that. There are people that really swear by the DMT plates. When I'm advising my students and sort of guiding them in how to break in this plate, these can last you 3 or 4 or even more years. These last a year to a year and a half. And they are a little more expensive. Again, there are teachers that don't, want to be able to hand their students something that works immediately, and so the DMT fits that bill. Now, in terms of breaking the EZE-LAP stone, I find that any piece of old steel, it doesn't even necessarily need to be hardened, but hardened would be better because it would be quicker. Taking that and rubbing it for 2 to 3 minutes a day at the beginning of your reed making session, 3 or 4 weeks of that, and you'll find that this has reached a very nice sort of smooth grit that just takes exactly the right amount of steel. Please don't do more than 2 or 3 minutes of this a day. We are oboe players, and we are known to sort of do things to an extreme degree. I don't want you guys getting bursitis or tendonitis. I want to emphasize that this is an easy thing to break in, and if you're a teacher, for your students, the economics of having one stone that could last, for almost all of a student's undergraduate period, there's a real advantage to that. But if you need something that really does it immediately, you can go with the DMT. The other abrasives I'm going to show you are, first of all, the Penguin, Japanese made very nice Emery paper. We sell 2 grades of this. This is the one that's of moderate abrasiveness. We have one that's super fine. And this is what we use to take off the old burr. So we'll sharpen a knife, raise a burr on it, and I'll talk about that in a minute. When we want to resharpen that knife, we take it, and I've torn it to be approximately the side of this, and we'll take off that burr And you don't want to go crazy with this, because if you do too much of this, you do just enough to take that burr off. If you do too much of this, this paper can kind of curl up and begin to curve the edge of that knife. We don't want that. We don't want that. We want it to be a nice, straight, clear angle that it meets at. So that is the purpose of the Emery paper. I'm going to show you one other abrasive product. This is a DMT extra coarse. I'm not remembering the exact grit of it. It might be a 120 or a 220. It is quite coarse. These are useful for putting a new bevel on a knife, regrinding the knife. Now, to do that, you're going to need to take one of your jigs and flatten it out a bit, open it up a bit. And this might be a little scary. You might have the angle that you absolutely want on that. But at any rate, if you can do it at a lower angle, you can put a shallower angle on this knife, and a completely new one. It works very quickly, this rough stone. And then you can put it back in the position that you use to put the real edge on it, and you can raise more easily a nice burr. Not everyone buys these, but I've found them useful and have redone people's knives on them. Nothing is self-explanatory in reed making, but I'll just show how we use this. You'll notice, by the way, that this joint here, we try to keep it very well fixed. We have a nice lever here where you can get a lot of force to keep that thing at a very particular angle. It might be a good idea for you to mark where that is. Now keep in mind, there's not one magic angle. I know that's a very hard concept for many oboe players. They say, what's the magic angle? What's the angle? The angle. This system can be adapted to your use. Some people hold a knife at a shallower angle, some steeper angle. They may need a different angle burr. That's something you've got to figure out, or if you're a student, you with your teacher. There are 3 ways that we can vary what we do with this. One is this angle. The steeper this angle, the more aggressively it'll make a burr. The other thing we can do is we can vary the force that we use with it. Do we use a very light touch? Do we do a very firm one? You certainly want to do a firm enough touch that the entire blade is meeting the surface equally. And then the last thing is, how many strokes do we do with that? Now, at the very, very beginning, it might only be 1 stroke or half a stroke even, because it doesn't need very much to raise that burr. And this is an important point. It's possible to have too great a burr. If that burr comes up, it will skate over the piece of cane instead of giving you that nice grab of the cane. Now, obviously, we've got a ledge here. There's a washer spring inside there that allows it to open up. And we want it very firmly held. And we have blades that are basically the width of the plate, 3 inches, 3 by 8. It's a good idea to regularly turn the stone, because believe it or not, these diamond points can start sort of going in one way with the grain. So it's a good idea to keep moving it around when you use it. Make note of, with a pencil, of where the knife comes to, so you can just keep track of exactly what angle you're using. As I say, if you want it to be more aggressive, you can make the angle less. If you want to, and the reversing, you can make it less aggressive, a wider angle. So keep that in mind. You're going to find that there is nothing in reed making. There's no tool that takes craft and touch out of it. You're going to have to figure out what touch works for you. I have, by the way, used knives to the point where I do as many as 12 strokes. I keep track of where my knives are. How many strokes does these new knives here? Okay, they only need 1 or 2 or 3, etc. When you first get the knife, it's going to make a bit of a noise. Okay, that shouldn't concern you. It makes squeak a little bit. And as I say, you want to make sure that you grab it this way and make sure that a lot of people lean away from the tip of the blade. I would make sure that the tip of the blade is making good contact. Needless to say, this is at this point, a rather aggressive cut. And I've already raised a burr on this, okay? And in the break-in process, what you can do is you can go and take off that burr and then repeat what I just did. And do this a number of times, and you'll find that eventually it smooths out, the action smooths out. Now, also, again, the more steel grit gets in here, the more you smooth it, the closer it'll be to those nice India oil stone textures that take off just enough steel to do the job and are not too aggressive. We get a lot of questions, by the way, about the feet that we put on these. The DMT stone is a thicker plate than the EZE-LAP is. Consequently, when we first got these, we had to worry about whether we could equalize that height. Now, these are the feet that come with the DMT. Occasionally, these come with the feet already mounted on them, but they always include 4 of these feet. When you combine these two together, it's higher than this, as I just said. And if you think about it, that means that the blade is going to be meeting at a different angle. The higher plate, it's going to be meeting at a shallower angle. Now, of course, you can try changing the angle of the jig. That's fine. You can do that. You could try trimming the feet on this. And in fact, for a while, what we did is we just used this backing material, which is considerably thinner, and put that underneath. The other thing I should point out, by the way, which I haven't mentioned in my other talk, is that this is, of course, a smoother grit. So that requires that this jig be at a steeper angle so that it's a more aggressive angle for that. All of these things are things you have to feel your way into. Angela always sets up the angle on the jig to suit the particular stone that's been ordered.
And it's marked.
It's marked in that way, yeah. Again, if you have any questions about this, please contact us. You know, these are the kind of feet you can probably get in any hardware store. We can send you spare feet. You know, at a certain point with my EZE-LAP, I slice a piece of wine cork and have that take the place. I super glue it on. If you have any questions about these things, folks, contact us, and either Angela Quattrini or I are very glad to answer any questions you might have about this. We've tried to make all of this as accessible price-wise as we can. It is a business. We do have bills to pay. At any rate, I hope you find that helpful.